It's not very often that I come up with challenge runs for the Pokémon franchise, mostly because I prefer to spend a long time in a single save rather than do throwaway runs of it, but a wave of inspiration sparked by my recent dive into Stadium and Nuzlocke and Crystal have left me wanting a bit more. My experience with the Pokémon games mostly revolves around Gen 2 followed by 1 and then 6, but outside of that it's been fan games and fan games, but I did find myself pleasantly surprised by Shield when I eventually fired it up, and I found myself wanting to replay it. Sword and Shield offer an Eevee so early as well as give it a slightly expanded set of learnable moves such as Facade and Weather Ball, so I ended up picking Shield, and definitely for no other reason. So I ask the question, can you beat Pokémon Shield using only a lone Eevee? The game starts out as it normally does with introductory tutorial stuff until I go to Hop's house for the second time, where I choose Score Bunny, except whoa, it's actually an Eevee, how did that happen? Eevee proves to be less effective against Grookey than Score Bunny, a very fortunate crit turns what would have been a loss into a win, and Eevee's growth rate means that I have to beat both of his Pokémon to even reach level 6. After I finish my first Pokémon battle, the Wooloo breaks through the gate next to my house by smashing its head against the gate that apparently leads into hell itself. Beyond the flimsy wooden hellgate, I run into Suicune or something, which all of my attacks go straight through, and we pass out in the vape cloud only to be rescued by Leon. My mother hallucinates a Score Bunny in her house instead of the Eevee that I clearly picked, so running away as fast as possible, I begin my trek to the research center. As soon as I make it to the Pokemon Center, I immediately go to the move relearner guy so I can get Covet and Tail Whip on my Eevee, which were better than just having empty slots there, and give it a nickname before heading up to Magnolia's house. At Magnolia's house, Hop challenges me to a second battle, but this time he comes prepared with a few more level ups, but pushing through with the first of many in-battle items used is enough to score me the win. Leon gives us a letter of endorsement which he definitely didn't have on him this whole time and totally wasn't going to give to us anyway, then a meteor falls from the sky and fucking kills everyone. Magnolia makes an expensive watch out of it, and after doing a bit of training on the new wandering Pokemon here before meeting Hop at the station, he kindly gives me a TM for Swift which I put in Tackle's place. I also received the camping gear here, but I made the decision right at this moment to not use camping at all, since it provides a slew of in-combat benefits such as 20% boosted experience gain, dodge attacks, and gain an increased crit ratio, and I was going for as much of an old-school style run as possible with none of those benefits. I take a moment here to talk to the NPCs that gift you an Eevee and Pikachu if you have save data from either of those games, but after talking to Sonia right outside to receive the Pokemon box link, they go directly into the box, never to be seen or heard from again. Hugging the left cliff face brings me to the TM for Tail Slap, which I really thought Eevee would be able to learn, but nope, I guess its tail just isn't hard enough. I'll save you the grind that I put myself through here, so the short version of what I did here is fight in the Dynamax dens for over an hour, until I was able to stockpile 5,000 watts to buy the technical record for Iron Tail, which I did know Eevee can learn, and it will be absolutely invaluable in letting me take on the rock types that I'll be encountering. Entering Motorstoke for the first time, I duck into the Pokemon Center and pick up a handful of X items. I've never used any of these before, but I had a feeling that they'd come in handy. Talking to this guy unlocks the rest of the fucking options menu, I guess, and blah 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 story pick a number, to which I chose 333 since it was as close to spelling out Eevee as I could get on the uniform. I also have another self-imposed rule that I thought would make this interesting. I'm allowed to use one Dynamax candy per gym that I beat, and after Eternamax Eternatus, I can max it out for the Leon fight. Anyway, Hop challenges me to another battle west to the Pokemon Center, and he quickly regrets giving me the TM for Swift since I used that along with same type attack bonus and one potion to pretty much wipe out his whole team. I make a quick stop at the Motorstoke station to deal with the Slowpoke that showed up there so the Pokemon Centers will stop nagging me about the DLC, and while you have to catch it to finish the battle, you can just immediately dump it into the box and press on. The trainers on the way to the Galar mine don't pose much of a problem, and the mine itself proves that getting Iron Tail as early as I did was worth it. Rock types, however, aren't my only concern here, as this worker comes packing the fighting type Timber. Luckily, its most troublesome attack is Low Kick, which doesn't do much even with a crit thanks to Eevee's low weight, so 2 uses of Swift sorts it out, and the process repeats for the next 2 Timbers with me taking a hit from both Pound and Rock Throw, although Champ is strong enough to come out on top. I was keeping experience candies just in case I ran into any roadblocks, so with Bede being a Psychic type trainer, and with me still having post-Gen 1 Psychic type stress disorder, I give Champ a couple of them to hit level 20. That was a level that I was pretty sure that I'd learn Bite, but that's not a level where Eevee learns it in any generation, especially here where it's actually 25, and Eevee can't even learn Crunch for an extra kick in the Pokeballs. As I'm going through, I knock out one Pikachu to hit level 21, and definitely not to send a message to the other Pikachus that this is Eevee turf now, and I even find a kid dressed as an Eevee who sends out an Eevee for an Eevee on Eevee fight, but my Eevee proves to be the superior Eevee, with 2 uses of Eevee's good old Swift to kill this Eevee kid's Eevee, before I run into my first Super Saiyan Yamper. Gym Leader Milo is no slouch with just an Eevee. I have to pull out a few healing items to win in the end, but I get there without too much trouble. The reporter and interview double battles just outright don't start if you only have one Pokemon in your party, so moving on from that I encounter a chef who throws an apple at me, which I think is a little rude. I catch a Magikarp, which is a surprise tool that will help us later. Champ's fragility begins to show as I almost die to a literal pink bear, but I'm able to get healed up during the fight and I again wipe the floor with Team Yell. Hop returns for yet another whooping, and I get the hint from the last battle that I should probably get Bite sooner rather than later, so a handful of experience candies gets me there and Hop goes down fairly smoothly. In the next route, I'm fortunately not immediately snapped in half by a Krogunk, only poisoned by it, so I use an antidote, then knock it out with 2 uses of Swift. There's a Shell Bell on the eastern part of the dock in this town, which when given to a Pokemon will heal them based on the amount of damage they deal with any attack, so with that in my pocket, I chat to Nessa, Ball Guy, and then prep for the second gym. The trainers in Nessa's gym generally don't pose a problem since none of them resist normal type attacks, and any dual water and rock types would be weak to Iron Tail. Or so I thought. I use the first Dynamax candy of the run and put the Shell Bell on about halfway through the gym, then make it to Nessa, who knocks me out twice using a combination of Max Geyser to set up Rain, along with Razor Shell for big damage, but in the end the winning strategy becomes Dynamax early to use 3 Max Steel Spikes, which gives me 3 defense boosts before facing the Dreadnought. When it actually comes out, it starts with a Max Geyser to set up the Rain, Dreadnought returns to its normal size, and once it does, its Razor Shell's damage is nerfed quite hard by my defense boosts, so I'm able to then smack it around with Iron Tail repeatedly with the occasional defense drop from Iron Tail itself, making things much easier. 3 Iron Tails, a handful of potions, plus 1 quick attack later, her Dreadnought goes down on my 4th attempt. Beat is waiting for me in this cave again, and I actually have Bite this time as well as being over-leveled, so he doesn't really stand a chance against me. The next Dragon Roller manages to survive a smack with Iron Tail, but Bite finishes the job and then I run into Team Yell. This is a double battle, and it goes well, which is a term I use loosely here since I barely survived several times, only holding on by guzzling super potions. I've been editing these out, but Champ has been trying to evolve into Espeon on each level up since about 20, so this is what I go through every time this happens. This path takes me across a bridge to the eastern entrance to Motorstoke, and there are even more of these IV increasing feathers on it. Another helpful move that Eevee can learn, much to my surprise, is Shadow Ball, which you may think is redundant when I already have Bite, and my thinking behind getting it is that I should get a move that's effective against ghost types that also doesn't make contact. I have no counter at all for fighting types though. There is no punchline, please send help. All of the prep work that I did in the last hour of real time was purely to get some levels so I can beat Marnie, and some extra moves for coverage won't hurt either, so when I get to battle her after getting prepared enough to actually take out her Krogunk, the rest of her team follows suit first try. This fight was just me rubbing my face against him repeatedly until I could figure out a strategy, and after an hour of dicking around I came up with this. Start off by using an X special defense for that very helpful 2-stage boost, and follow up with Shadow Ball as much as possible for special defense reductions. Arcanine is a little more dangerous than Ninetales since it'll use Flame Wheel that goes against my unboosted defense, and does about double the damage that Ninetales was doing with Quick Attack. On the flip side, it having Intimidate and me suffering from a burn is irrelevant by using Shadow Ball and Swift, so that same process still works. When Center Scorch comes out, immediately use Max Strike to bring down its speed, healing on the second turn, and using a Max Steel Spike for the third. It'll occasionally use Smoke Screen, but Swift handily counters that, and you don't want to use Max Phantasm to lower its defense, because it will respond with Coil to raise its attack, defense, and accuracy, then just snap you in half with Bug Bite. With my stats being all kinds of fucked up and Shadow Ball barely doing any damage, I decide to place my bets on mixing up between Shadow Ball for the special defense drop, Swift to make sure I don't miss, and Super Potion so I don't die. I end up being here for a little while, but this really stupid strat that I don't doubt would get me hate mail in PvP ends up working to secure my 3rd gym badge. After that ordeal, I'm approached by a walking corpse that hands me its lead card, and running away screaming puts me up against one of the few things worse than the undead, Anita Sarkeesian. She sticks to metronome strats, and the most damaging attack she hits me with is Oblivion Wing of all things, which I've never even seen before, but it's used by the fucking cover mascot Yveltal in Pokemon Y, which is terrifying. I die a few times on my way to Stow One Side, thanks to a fighting type and rock type being in my way that my squishy Eevee struggles hard against, but thanks to 2 rock slides leaving me with 1 HP, I'm able to heal up and take it out with an Iron Tail. Stow One Side doesn't have much for me, just a metal coat on a rooftop that doesn't do much besides remind me of my beloved Steelix, and Hop challenges me to a battle for what, the 7th time now? He beats me a few times, as is becoming a recurring theme, so boosting myself up to level 41 and putting leftovers back on ends up getting me the win in the end. Not taking into account the Super Potion drip that I had to put Eevee on to finally win. The prick even knocked off my leftovers with Thwacky, but after taking that out, his Toxel bites the dust in a single takedown. The Ghost-type gym is fairly easy thanks to Eevee's immunity to Ghost moves, as well as having Shadow Ball boosted by the Wise Glasses, and for the first time I backtracked to the reception area to go and heal up before going up against Alistair. As has become common, Alistair takes a few tries, but it's nothing that another helping of experience candy can't help with, so I spend some time grabbing some more of those along with putting leftovers back on and give it a few more shots. An X special defense right off the bat gives me a much needed buffer against brutal swing, letting me survive it no problem, and an X special attack boosts the damage of Shadow Ball enough to go from a 3-shot kill to a 1. Mimikyu outspeeds me and starts off with a Hone Claws, which is worrying, but a second Shadow Ball kills it outright, as it spends one turn too much focusing on stat boosts. Third up is Cursula, and this is where I decide to Dynamax with a Max Phantasm. Cursula responds by killing itself with Curse, which puts a very punishing health drain on me per turn, but that's why I Dynamax now instead of when his Gengar comes out, because I figure I have to go all out at the very end to obliterate his Gigantamax Gengar before the Curse kills me. Leftovers does help a little with this, and its Max Darkness isn't as damaging against the Curse, so on my third and final Dynamax turn, a second Max Phantasm takes it out and scores me my 4th badge. I find Beat again smashing a mural, so I proceed to smash him in a Pokemon battle. Seriously, it was piss easy. I even did it on my first try without using any X items by just going ham with Shadow Ball. I've now made it to Bolonli, which I've likely mispronounced the name of, and this is an area that I was looking forward to making it to, because there's an item that I really want here. Yeah, I'll ignore that. The second house from the left has a battle against a Pokemon breeder who gives you an Eevee light when you win, and because this Eevee is capable of evolving unlike the one that has a Gigantamax factor, this will be very helpful if I need survivability, so I put it on right away. There's not much else to do here, so I go right into the Fairy Gym, and this gym is one that I was expecting to be a breather, since during it you'll be answering quiz questions during each fight, and if you pick well, you receive some free stat boosts. Even without them, the only type advantage that's even present for these initial battles is me with my Iron Tail, so I can pretty much steamroll through this gym mission made all the more easy by the quiz question stat boost, either helping me sweep entire teams, or save on healing item expenses against opponents that are a bit bulkier. The gym leader battle itself also has quiz questions, but this time instead of picking what's correct, she starts throwing in some more curveballs. As soon as her Alchemy comes out, I immediately Dynamax Champ to boost his health, nail it with a Max Phantasm to knock its defense stat a little bit down, and while I don't have any PP left to use Max Steel Spike, Max Strike does more than enough damage to finish it in 2 more uses, and Opal coughs up the 5th gym badge without me even having to use any X items and on my first try to boot. Hop challenges me again on the bridge to Route 7, and his party has become a lot more formidable than mine, with his Heatmore able to wipe the floor with me by just using Fire Lash. I've made it to the point that even basic trainers are starting to become more of a threat, which is not balanced out by Weatherboard doing ice damage around this area. Melanie's gym mission is arguably one of the worst ones in the game, and even Sword doesn't change it, only giving a coat of brown paint. 2 of the 3 trainers in this gym take me out with crits like I'm playing Stadium or something, and I finally make it to the gym leader. This fight begins with an X special defense, a guard spec so Icy Wind doesn't lower my speed, an X accuracy just to help Iron Tail hit every time, and finally an X attack to add that extra punch to Iron Tail and Double Edge. Frostmoth goes down in 1 hit, as does Darmanitan. Ice Cube takes 2 and manages to lower my speed when my guard spec wears off, then her Ace Lapras comes out. God, I wish that was my ball. Wait, what? Lapras opens with a G-Max Resonance, which has the fun side effect of halving the direct damage it takes for 5 turns, followed up by a G-Max Geyser, and I respond with a Max Steel Spike for the defense boost. Lapras also returns to normal health 1 turn earlier, so a Max Strike rips off a big chunk of its health bar before I shrink back down as well. A Super Potion heals me up for the last stretch of the battle, and it's a good thing I did that too, because Lapras not only lands a Sing to put me to sleep, but outspeeds me to land a Surf. It doesn't do much damage, and while my Iron Tail doesn't either, luckily for me, that's still enough to finish off her Lapras. After a well-earned victory against Melanie and doing some story stuff, Hop challenges me to yet another battle, and he's not as tough this time, because I preemptively use an X defense and X special attack, so those plus a handful of uses of Weather Ball in this hail turns it to a fairly potent Ice-type move that takes care of him fairly easily. None of the trainers on the way to Spikemouth pose much of a problem, and Weather Ball carries me through to the Bite Guy again. Unfortunately, my old habit of failing to save my game bites me in the bum again. I'll just let you watch and see what happened. Marnie only took me about 15 minutes to beat this time, with her Croagunk evolving into Toxicroak to make this run specifically more difficult for me. So right from the word go, I pop an X defense, an X accuracy, and an X speed, which makes me bulky enough to take a brick break. Toxicroak makes the mistake of using Swagger on me, so without me having to use an X attack, my double edge is pumped up enough to one-shot it before it can split me in half with Karate Chop, which carries over to Morpeko as well that I almost die to recoil damage on. This gym mission is where I'm forced to bring in a second party member which I caught, so I'd actually be able to enter it, but without having anything that would actually be useful in combat, so I just let Magikarp die as soon as I possibly can and make sure not to do anything other than splash with it. Naturally, I forgot to save my game, so after 2 losses and 10 of my very valuable minutes wasted, I pop an X defense and X attack on Champ, which I can do both of at once thanks to this being a double battle, and then I go to town. Tragically, I don't have Swift anymore, so I can't hit both of my opponents during a double battle, but what matters most here is that Drapion goes down first so it doesn't fuck me up by inflicting poison on me once again. After that, it's time to take on Piers, and he's got a few tricks up his sleeve. I go back to the wild area to do a bit more grinding for experience candies, as well as more watts in case I want to get something extra, and in doing so, Champ makes it to level 57, at which point I swap out Double Edge for last resort. This was a mistake, as I'll soon find out. I had no idea if I needed to keep Magikarp around for the Piers battle, but I did anyway, which only means that it'll gain some of the experience from this battle, so I left it in my party. I then proceeded to get rocked by Piers for a little before developing a strategy which, to the surprise of nobody, involves me pumping my Eevee full of drugs. I start with a guard spec so its Scrafty Sand attack can't hit, then an X defense to barely survive a Brick Break crit, heal up, use an X attack, heal up again and smack it with an Iron Tail when I really should have used an X accuracy instead, but I got away with it this time. And Obstagoon is a brick shithouse that will squash me with counter if I do too much damage to it, and a second X defense should make Eevee tanky enough to not get ruined by a single one of its attacks. Then Skuntank is the last man standing. If it nails me with Toxic, then I'm on a rapidly ticking clock, so I decide to use a second X attack for a +3 last resort that one-shots it, leaving me with enough health to survive its Aftermath ability. Something about a big surge of Dynamax energy happens. I dunno man, I'm too much of a Gen 2 purist shitlord to remember all this newfangled terminology and mechanics. So I then head into Route 9 where I'm killed by a teapot and still didn't save. So I had to fight Piers. Again. After that ordeal, this time around I say screw that and walk past the edge of his cone of vision, grabbing the safety goggles and putting them on right away, then back through Route 7 into Hammerlock for more story stuff up to Raihan's fight. His gym mission is a trio of double battles, so I have to bring Magikarp in for this, and I decide to start cautiously by using an X special defense on Eevee. Weather Ball does water-type damage for a moment thanks to the Pelipper's Drizzle ability, so after trying everything else I've got, I then smash them to pieces with Last Resort. Mercifully, they do let me heal here before taking on each of them, so I put Eviolite back on Eevee for now and take on the second fight. Turbonator is bad enough, but the immediate Sunlight makes things a little harder off the get-go by turning Weather Ball into a Fire-type attack for the first 5 turns. Plus, with both of them resisting Iron Tail, I'm in a bad position. The best way to keep myself going here is to heal anytime I go under half health, cure the burn when that happens as well, and only attack when I'm confident that I can survive a turn in doing so. If I'm too aggressive or target Turtonator while Ninetales is still alive, then it's likely to destroy me with Shell Trap and whatever else the Ninetales uses, and if I'm not healed up enough, then a stray crit might just take me out. It takes a while, but I'm able to work around it and whittle it down with Shadow Ball. No special defense drops when I wanted them, but I didn't feel like I needed to rely on those during this fight anyway. I used a few experience candies on Eevee here to bump it up to level 61 to hopefully save on X item expenses, but I may not have needed to for this fight because the Abomasnow's Snow Warning ability, turning Weather Ball into an Ice-type attack, works great against its own ally. Then once I take that out, Abomasnow goes down from just 1 Weather Ball and 2 Iron Tails. Raihan's Gym Leader battle works the same way as his gym mission, where it's a double battle with one of his Pokemon having an ability that causes weather to start right off the bat, and for this it's a Sandstorm. Sandstorm changes Weather Ball into a Rock-type attack, which doesn't work too well against his Flygon, and Gigalith has Body Press, which does work well against my face. I'll spare you from sitting through my losses, but my winning attempt started with an X defense and an X accuracy with Magikarp putting on a nice new pair of safety goggles, which didn't matter because he immediately got served on a platter by a Thunder Punch and depriving me of my extra turn to use items. Great. One more X attack, a Guard Spec to stop Breaking Swipe from gimping my attack, and I'm all set up for the long haul. This is the winning attempt, and it took me 23 minutes to get through since I had to balance keeping myself healed and keeping a Guard Spec up so I can focus on taking out something which ended up being his Gigalith, because Body Press hurts like a bitch, and the sooner I take down one of them, the more forgiving the rest of these turns become, and I can heal, buff, or drop a Guard Spec a little more freely. Unfortunately, once his Gigalith goes down, he replaces it with a Sandaconda that keeps paralyzing me with Glare and has Protect on top of that, so I have to treat this like a marathon, not a sprint, and keep Champ healed at all costs. An Iron Tail takes out Flygon, saving me from having to use any more Guard Specs, and Champ just barely survives the Sandstorm in time for a heal. However, I'm not out of the woods yet. The change in music indicates that his last Pokemon is coming out, which means he's going to Gigantamax it, and having Sandaconda still on the field for this is worse, because he'll also receive stat boosts from things like Max Steel Spike. With a heavily roided up Champ constantly being battered by the Sandstorm and nailed by these max attacks, I Dynamax him and prepare for a tough final stretch. Champ just barely hangs on after taking a Max Steel Spike and responding with one of his own. Then in an absurd stroke of luck, his Sandaconda goes for a Glare rather than finishing me off, and the Sandstorm subsides on the same turn, allowing me to come back from the brink of death with a Max Phantasm on my last Dynamax turn to take out Sandaconda through its Protect. Champ takes 8 damage from the Sandstorm, fully confirming that I would have lost here had it not subsided, then shrinks back down to normal size, just in time to deal with another Body Press. But after a really long fucking time and a +4 attack last resort, Duraludon finally goes down for the 8th and final Gym Badge. I make sure to stock up on a boatload of X items because I know for a fact I'm going to need them for the Champion Cup at the end here, and I get ready to take the train to Winden. This guy has a very unfortunate combination of Pokemon to take me on with. Corviknight takes neutral damage from Weather Ball and a crit takes off half its health, then Flygon dies instantly to a 4 times effective Ice-type Weather Ball. This guy blows my dick off with a close combat from his fucking Anal Bead Pokemon, so I take a quick detour to the wild area again to pick up the TM for Facade and replace Last Resort. Facade is a normal type move that doubles in power from 70 to 140 if I'm burned, poisoned, or paralyzed, and with my general survivability improving thanks to holding an Eevee, I thought that this move would be good for both general use and to give me a normal type move I can freely use without having to spend everything else once first. Gentleman Glenn hands over enough money for me to make an easy reference to Dragon Ball Z, and the double battle here is skipped to bring me directly to Winden. I'm finally up to the Champion Cup and my first opponent is Marnie, so I start off with an X defense and an X attack, then one-shot her Lipard with an Iron Tail. Toxicroak is going to be a bitch and a half just like it normally is, but it's kind enough to hit me with a Toxic before being one-shotted by an Iron Tail. With Facade currently being my most powerful move, I use it to execute Morpeko, which brings us to Grimmsnarl, which she Gigantamaxes, so I respond by Dynamaxing as well, and begin with a Max Phantasm to bring down its defense. On the next turn, I go with a full restore before the Toxic Poison gains too much momentum on me, and Grimmsnarl's second turn has it use G-Max Snooze, so I've now got one turn to take it out before I fall asleep. Luckily, Max Steel Spike finishes the job, and allows me to progress to the second battle. After taking a moment to mourn that absolute banger of a Gym Leader theme and begin the second battle, I use an X attack which is balanced out by it using Cotton Guard, but the prick not only uses a full restore on his first Pokemon, he crits and paralyzes me with a single Body Slam. The AI doesn't seem to have learned their lesson to not use Swagger against a physical attacker, but then again it won't work so great against a part Steel type anyway, so maybe Hop is actually a genius. Whatever the case, we both Dynamax and start working on dicking around with our stats, at least until I run out of ideas and use Max Strike, which I didn't think would just kill it outright, but it did. There's a bit of an intermission as I do a little bit of a hunt around for this dickhead who's hiding in plain sight, and can you tell that I think it feels like padding and I don't like it? I didn't even have to use a single X item on any of the 3 battles against him, so after that shit is done, we're on to Rose Tower. None of the Pokemon here are very dangerous, mostly just tanky, so after 15 minutes of playing around in this elevator, I make it to the top to take on the crazy bitch Oleana. She begins by using Will-O-Wisp, which thanks to this being addressed in Gen 6, my Facade ignores the halved attack from being burned, so I appreciate the damage boost from that, and then try to use it immediately, against a Ghost type. Thankfully, due to me being burned and not poisoned, Venoshock doesn't do double damage to me, which is great because I would have died here with it. And with the necessity to heal, I use a full restore and start using Shadow Ball while downing a healing item every second turn. With Leon shouting for drinks at the hotel, we leave Chem and Rose alone without another word, which I'm sure won't come up in about half an hour from now or anything, and we're back to the stadium for the finals. Just to make sure I'm that little bit extra prepared, I make a run across the Motorstoke Bridge to grab the feathers that have respawned there, then make my way to the locker room where everybody is waiting. Bede comes back because I apparently didn't hate him enough already, and he's changed his whole team from Psychic types to Fairy, which doesn't bode well for my damage with Shadow Ball, although he doesn't seem to be hitting very hard either, so 3 of them takes down his Mawile. Hatterene comes out and immediately Gigantamaxes, but I have the same idea, and begin with a Max Phantasm to lower its defense for a bit, and 2 G-Max Smites plus a Max Mindstorm are not enough to take me down, so after I respond with a full restore to wipe the confusion and a Max Steel Spike, we both downsize where Bede is immediately beaten by another Shadow Ball. I'm up against Nessa next, who opens the fight with, "This thing, Jesus Christ, kill it before it lays eggs." Iron Tail doesn't do as much damage as I'd hoped, and with it having used Swords Dance twice, I decide to go all out right off the bat and Dynamax so I can knock it out as quickly as possible. Fortunately for me, its emergency exit ability kicks in and it bails to throw Seeking under the bus, which works out great for me. I hit it with a Max Strike since that seems to have done a great job at one-shotting things so far, but Nessie heals it up, so I'm forced to go with my usual series of attacks for the rest of the fight. She does heal with potions and Roost on Pelipper, but for the most part, this fight was so easy that it was an actual breather compared to the last few gym leaders. Max Darkness hurts a fair bit, G-Max Stone Surge almost kills me outright, and its secondary effect is meaningless here, and a Shadow Ball then finishes the job. The game's nice enough to let you leave the stadium, so I take the chance to restock on healing items before moving directly onto Alistair. I'm sure I don't need to tell you which move I mainly used in this fight, although I do break out the X items again after taking a loss to his Gengar that one-shotted me with Sludge Bomb, after boosting its special attack twice with Max Ooze. That's my strategy, you dick. Since it's the only battle item of its kind that I haven't used yet, I decide to pop a dire hit here when Chandelure enters the battle, and it seems to pay off with Shadow Ball critting it after my special attack has been dumpstered by its mystical fire. I have 3 X items buffing me here to make up for it, so the strategy changes from Shadow Ball to Iron Tail, immediately paying off with a crit one-shotting Poltegeist. Shadow Ball still manages to tear off half of Cursola's health bar with 2 consecutive crits, which might be the first time that I've been on the receiving end of what I've come to nickname Stadium Lock. Gengar Gigantamaxes to meet Dynamaxed Eevee, and the dire hit does an incredible job paying for itself by critting with the Max Phantasm 2 out of the 3 times that I used it, wiping out the Gengar and winning me the fight. Rose immediately destroys my shit with 2 Mega Horn hits even though I started with an X defense, so I use my boatload of experience candies I stockpiled through this run to get Champ to level 70 and hopefully counteract that. In an incredible stroke of luck, it misses Mega Horn on its first turn, which gives me a great chance to use 2 X defenses and a special attack. Not wasting any time, I Dynamax Champ to nail it with a Max Phantasm, which doesn't do as much damage as I hoped, but Max Steel Spike is enough to finish the job while also increasing my defense again to add to my obscene amount of stat buffs. Ferrothorn takes a Max Strike which brings its speed down a bit, and all these stat boosts allow me to survive a body press without too much trouble. Klinklang is up next, and I have no good countermeasures for a Steel type, so Shadow Ball it is for the special defense reduction for another 2-hit kill, and Berserker then enters the fight. Its special defense is a bit on the low side, which is great news for me, so another 2 of those takes it down. And finally he has a Copperaja, which he Gigantamaxes, and since I've already used mine, it's now me against a literal wall of steel. It uses G-Max Steel Surge, which is effectively just Max Steel Spike but with a secondary effect that just so happens to be completely unhelpful to it. Then I take a Max Mindstorm before it continues to pick on someone its own size. Or of a more comparable size. With Champ being so durable from all the drugs I've pumped him with, I decide to go with good old Shadow Ball since I know my other 3 attacks will be resisted, and 3 of them take it out, leaving me free to provide backup for Leon. More story stuff happens as the game's mascots join the fight, so now it's a 4v1 in my favor, although not dying after all of this is kind of nice, so I begin this phase with an X special defense while my allies clean house for me. Hop's double dies to a Max Wormwind and he replaces it with a Snorlax of all things, and I miss with an Iron Tail which kind of ruins this cool climactic moment, but hey, that's fine. Its last health point is blasted off by, what else, Shadow Ball, and in a cruel twist of spite I catch it inside a level ball, so I can now end my Pokemon adventure by beating the champion. As soon as I'm back in the stadium, I use the last Dynamax candies on Champ to max out his Dynamax level, and the final battle begins. This fight was rough, as you'd expect from the champion, but as always I have an obscenely cheesy X-item spam strategy that I developed after about 20 minutes of testing the waters. First I open with an X special attack as Aegislash wastes the King Shield, and then an X defense as it hits me with a Sacred Sword, which still hurts like a bitch. An early Dynamax to buff a bit more with Max Steel Spike comes in handy, and it responding with an Outrage leaves me on 1 HP after shrinking back down to normal size. I then use an X Speed, another X Special Defense, an X Attack, and then knock out its Haxorus with a Weather Ball of all things. Dragapult joins the fight as I heal up, and with my +2 special attack, Shadow Ball only takes 2 hits on both that and Mr. Rhyme. Then I finally put on the X Accuracy, which completes a set of all 6 X items used on one Pokemon in a single fight. Anyway, Snipe Shot only does a worrying amount of damage if it crits, and that's not happening often enough for me to need to break the attacking and healing cycle, so Inteleon goes down after making sure that I have a guard sped up for his ace, which is a Gigantamax Charizard that will wreak havoc on my stats with max attacks if I don't. It opens with a Max Rockfall that causes a Sandstorm to kick up, and that proves to be its fatal blunder as this Sandstorm doubles the power of Weather Ball, making it doubly super effective against Charizard as well as critting, which almost one-shots it even while Gigantamaxed. In a hilarious twist of fate, Charizard falls to its own Sandstorm, and I become the new champion of Galar with a level 71 Eevee. I'm going to have to admit, I was not expecting to be able to beat this challenge without having to at least hit level 100, although that may be because beating Red at the end of Gen 2 has caused me to become jaded at what kind of absurd post-game super boss might await me, and the later games don't seem to be that cruel. This challenge was a lot of fun to play through, and I picked Sword and Shield specifically because I was already playing Stadium and Crystal at the same time as this, and I was so familiar with those games around that generation that I wanted something new to spice it up. This served as great incentive for me to play through Gen 8 and catch up on what I've missed, and I'll continue playing it off camera to potentially brainstorm some more video ideas with it, so thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.